But all of the Quran is based on metaphysics. In other words, hell, heaven, having accountability, all of that are outside of the framework of positive systems. So you want to have a positive Islamic economics, doesn't work. Sorry. I'll tell you where the root problem comes, because first generation and second generation and possibly third generation, we were all trained in the hands of neoclassical economists. And we just transported everything into Islamic economics. That's where the root of the problem is. But when I was talking about history, I wasn't talking just about the history of Islamic economics. I was talking about the history of Muslims. Because we have made accumulated errors that we come to this point where our theory and practice are not converging. That what we do and what we say are two different things. I know it's not an answer that pleases, but that's really the truth. We have to face problems. Otherwise we close our eyes. Some of those founding fathers you mentioned, and maybe Dr. Aslam will name them, but I won't name them. I'm just saying Islamic economics is the same as conventional economics, but it's more moral.
Right. All right. Yeah. We have time for one more question, unfortunately. I think.
Assalamualaikum, Prof. Delighted to have you back. And thank you for the most illuminating lecture.
Thank you.
In fact, when I saw the topic with the Islamic economics, the first thing that came to my mind was Islamic economics ever playing a leading role in shaping the economic model of any Muslim country? So that's the first thing. So if it didn't play a role, it probably never was vibrant in the first place. So the question of withering may not even arise. And if you look at the reality on the ground, most Muslim countries, most countries, including Malaysia, has been heavily influenced by neoliberalism. If you look at the history from the 1970s, through the influence of Friedman and Hayek, and how Thatcher and Reagan had shaped those countries, all other countries felt that that's the economic wisdom. That a country has to keep growing, growth will lead to prosperity, prosperity will lead to happiness, and eventually everyone would be happy. What Friedman and Hayek probably didn't realize is that the neoliberal mindset of reducing government intervention and having a small government, reducing taxes, taking away union powers have led to huge inequality. So but as you mentioned, they always try to protect the organization, right? So they came up with the Kuznets curve, that philosophy that eventually inequality will come down and everyone will become somehow honky-dory. Didn't actually happen. And the tragedy of commons kept, increasing to the extent today we have a huge environmental problem. And I believe the root cause of all this is financialization. As you pointed out in our lectures many years ago, the neoliberal economies have used finance as a tool to extend the breadth of the capitalist. As you pointed out in the lectures, right? You suppress the wages and keep increasing finance so that somehow the capitalist will be able to sell his goods and services on credit. But today the conventional economies are fighting back.
Yes.
If you see the likes of Stiglitz on progressive economics, Kate Raworth on donut economics, these are, I would believe, very close to our social justice concept of Islamic economics. So I think the problem we had in the past, Islamic economics was always trying to play outside the mainstream economic worldview, is how do we be part of the change, like what progressive economists are trying to do, to influence the change in the conventional economic mindset. Because Malaysia is not going to shift to Islamic economics if the rest of the world is still on the conventional neoliberalism model. So we need to see how Islamic economics can be part of that shift towards creating what we call sustainable economics, which is inclusive and sustainable. So the quick question is, to what extent Islamic economics have been seen by the rest of the economists as an alternative model, like what they're viewing Stiglitz and say Kate Raworth?
Yes, remember Stiglitz is part of that neoclassical economics set. The difference between the two, as we mentioned, neoclassical and classical, is the notion of moral framework, right? And the idea that, when you talk to the people that I know, you remember, for instance, there's a very famous statement by Paul Krugman, Nobel Prize winner economist. We got into a debate, and he wrote a paper, actually it came out in the New York Times, a very short article. I don't know, what is this thing you're talking about? Like, for instance, you mentioned von Hayek. Von Hayek actually has a book that there is no such thing as social justice. It's a hoax, right? Krugman said, economics is not a morality play. It had nothing to do with morality. Whereas classical economics was behavior inside a framework which was morally constrained. This one, it says, no, and another guy who was mentioning the other day said, finance has no moral flag to fly. Now, at least neoclassical economics is at best amoral. At worst, Stiglitz says it's immoral. And that's why he says we need a new social contract. What we're talking about here is that social contract. Not in terms of Islamic economics, which means Western economics given a hijab, but iqtisad, with its own axioms, with an organizing principle of social justice. In other words, it isn't no longer like this dichotomy of like positive normative and social justice is normative, therefore I don't need to talk about it. The more we try to look like Westerns, there is a hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you live with people 40 days and act like them, you're one of them. So if you really get habituated in thinking with the mindset of quote unquote Islamic economics, which is the same thing as neoclassical economics, but colored differently, you're not going to solve any problem. And frankly, we should stop caring about what economists are already wrong. Me, one of them. What do they have to say to us? I mean, this is what the mess they left us. This is what they have made out of resources that Allah has given them. Why should I care whether they like it or they don't like it? But the people that I know and respect, when you sit down and think, this is what we talk about, managing resources of the society in an Islamic way. I don't use Islamic economics. But I said, this is what we're saying. Everybody would agree. Yes, we should go this way. And so we say, if you have that organizing principle, then you can tell you said that Malaysian government, take any Muslim country, they're not going to go until the other side goes. But the other side is about to blow. Once it goes, this time is no recovery because there isn't enough money to bail out. When you have, right now, the total global debt to GDP ratio is now 231. Before 2007, but at the end of 2008, June of 2008, it was 200. So, and every country which saved Western capitalism, like Malaysia, during 2007-2008, is in part cannot do it because their own debt to GDP ratio is multiple of what it was before. Trade. The relationship of trade to total GDP, you look at it, has gone down to 13%. It used to be 70% before 2007, 2008. In other words, it provided a cushion for the fall. When it was a harsh landing of the economy, who cushioned it? Malaysia and the rest of the emerging markets and developing countries, because they kept up the demand. And they had enough resources to do it. Now, nobody has it. A very important point just came out. The World Bank put out a report that 8 out of the 10 financial centers are so over-indebted that if the recession comes, they're going to be unable to service their debt. What does that mean? It's bankruptcy. And if they grow, you think Islamic finance is far away? Fast. I think the rate of fall of Islamic finance will be double or triple of the rate of fall of Western finance. I guarantee you that. At least take my word. If it happens, inshallah, we will see.
All right, so that brings us to the end of the session. I think before we end, it's quite clear that, we're very grateful, Prof. Abbas, because I think what is really clear is that we have to really self-examine a lot of things. And it really sets the tone for what needs to get done. We have a broken world in many senses, and Islamic economics is no close to solving that, cracking that puzzle either. So in future...
But the iqtisad is.
Yes.
Iqtisad is the solution.
Exactly, and I think just even from looking at the basic axioms, it's quite clear that we haven't gone deep enough and we need a deeper discussion. And this is what we're trying to do here, the CIE and the Department of Economics together. And we plan to have future discussions, hopefully again with Prof. Abbas, because it was quite illuminating. And we'll also have Prof. Jomo joining us, inshallah, in March as well. So we hope that we get a reception like this, an audience like this. We're actually very surprised by the numbers and very encouraged by it too. That also highlights one of the problems we have. One thing is that we actually catered for 30 people, so the scarcity is quite clear on the table there.
No. We actually knew that the male participants would realize that the females are the ones that we need to thank. So we only got for the females. So that's how we...
Thank you.
The second thing that we fell short on, I think, is the media part of it. The live footage, that will obviously be much better because we know how it should be. We sort of focused on this end of the table rather than that end. We do have a video footage which we will be putting up on our YouTube and Facebook, which is the recorded version. Hopefully the board is more visible and the audio clearer. So there's a piece of paper here, a couple of pieces. If you would kindly, record your contact details, so the next one we can actually reach out to you directly, and maybe you can circulate that information. Hopefully we can make it much bigger, inshallah. Thank you very much, Prof. Abbas. It was really a pleasure. You may approach Prof. Abbas, take pictures and things for the next few minutes.